Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubs at the Club, the special Tubs After Dark edition. Again, brought to you by Snake River Stampede Whiskey, but we'll tell you a little bit more about that later in the show. We are the Idaho Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I am your host, Dallas Hammer, joined tonight again for this special Tubs After Dark instant reaction by brave, bold Brian Marceau.
Yeah, as instant as we could feasibly make happen. This is the downside. By the way, both Dallas and I are going to have garbage voices from yelling. This is as fast as we can do it, guys. So yes, this is our version of instant reaction. Dude, I'm ready to go. This was such a kick-ass day.
Man, it was seriously one of my favorite days in Vandal football history. Taylor Cash in the comment section. Dallas with the fresh post-game voice. Love it. It actually is also a little bit of the power nap that I just woke up from. A little bit of an emotional day for the Hammer household. So,
okay. I was about to bitch about you not taking yes for an answer.
Yeah, sorry. I got real with the folks here. Today was a pretty emotional, hard day for our family. So, anyways, we're not here to talk about that. What we are here to talk about is the number 4 Idaho Vandals kicking the absolute shit out of the Albany Great Danes. 41-13 is the final score. Brian, I'm going to ask for your immediate reaction because, again, we are immediately reacting to this game.
So this was such an ass kicking that we don't even need to do kind of the play-by-play blow. We typically to start out, we establish a narrative of how the game went. And hey, Idaho led 41-3, a little more than halfway through the third quarter. That's what happened. So the question is what went well? Let's just start offensively because a lot went well in a 41-13 ass kicking that easily could have been a 62. Could have been a 62-13 win. So what went well? I got to say, look, we know that Charlie Vleem and Kane Robnett are out for the season on the O-line. So that's 2 starting level producers for Idaho out. And in our first FCS game, Idaho's O-line looked great. Jack Wagner had pretty minimal pressure, pretty minimal amount of time that he was on the run in any sort of way. This isn't the same Albany team that beat Idaho in 2023, but still, this is Idaho finally getting a shot at an FCS team. And backup quarterbacks in, you want to give him time. Yeah, the O-line absolutely gave Jack Wagner a good amount of time. Or if you want to look at the rushing game, both Nate Thomas and Elisha Cummings, and hey, actually Art Williams as a backup too. They made plays, but they had space. Taylor Cash in the comment section took 1 QB hit all game. Thank you. Yeah. No, Wagner was on his feet the entire day. There were a good amount of plays where he had a lot of pocket time to make the reads he needed to. And look, we'll talk about individual rushing contributors later, sure, but the running backs, they had room. So hey, this show, I feel correctly, over the last year and some this year has talked about, hey, somewhere between last year's little bit offensive line not producing as well. For me, the first 2 games, it was, hey, we don't yet know what to gauge the offensive line yet against probably the 2 most talented defenses we're going to play. Against FCS level, this O-line answered the call. It's great to be able to say that out loud, but no, the O-line was fantastic today.
Yeah, we'll see as the season goes on if Albany continues to be, again, the number 17 team in the country. I think they were closer to the number 170th team in the country. They looked like absolute trash. Shout out Greg Gattuso for the incredible job he's doing this year. Brian, the Vandals had 33 carries for 247 yards. That's 7.5 yards a carry. That's any concerns that we had about the offensive line, I feel like they've been mostly answered today. Again, like you mentioned, 2 starters are out for the season, and we're already seeing the depth has certainly improved from what we've seen over, honestly, the last 7 years of Vandal football, but primarily over the last 2 years, we've really seen that step up because it didn't matter who it was. Nate Thomas, 8 carries for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. Eli Cummings, 11 carries, 71 yards. Art Williams, again, 6 carries, 37 yards. Emerson Cortez Menovar got a jet sweep going that was a 28-yard rush. Like Day Buchanan looked pretty good in a couple carries that he got. Missed a couple pass blocks and didn't see the field a ton. But as Nick Weber says in the chat, our starters put up video game stats. Like it really, if you for some reason did not watch this game, highly recommend going back and finding the replay on ESPN Plus. Idaho did let Albany move down the field pretty well on the opening drive. They got the ball to start on the 42. Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, like not disagreeing with the basic point that Albany did threaten to score like their first 2 drives, but like Idaho should have had a 3 and out after a long kickoff return. It was a dumb penalty that extended that drive.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Keyshawn James Newby got tagged for a couple different unsportsmanlikes and post whistle scrums, and a couple different guys on the defense had that issue. But again, that's what you expect from Albany, just a bunch of bitches doing stuff after the whistle, and again, just trying to get under Idaho's skin the way that they did in the playoffs last year. But what happened is they missed that field goal on the first drive, and then Idaho goes 80 yards in 3 plays. Like truly, honestly, from the get-go, this game was absolutely over. Taylor Cash in the comment section, penalties kept that drive alive. Crew had 76, bad kickoff plus penalties. And then James Aldrich, if I was Albany, I'd have the quarterback take a separate flight back to Wisconsin. Like it was rough, Brian. We're going to go through the what went well and what didn't go well. When we hit the what didn't go well, there's not going to be a whole lot to talk about. This was truly one of the best Vandal games I've ever been to. Pure domination, truly in all phases of the game, other than a bad first snap on the first PAT.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I do think we should hit before we shift to what went well defensively, which is a lot. I think we should just talk about the quarterback thing for a second. Just Jack Wagner played, and I just think most of the people that are like in the hashtag only Tubbs Discord, patreon.com/Tubbs the club, are pretty much on the same page, which is like one. If you have your backup quarterback in, like there's a different subtext to what you understand what type of performance you're going to expect. And buttressed with, if Idaho's defense is going to kick ass so much, we don't need a quarterback to win games. We need a quarterback to keep the defense honest, make some plays, and not turn the ball over. Jack Wagner
lose the game essentially.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, do enough that we can't have the box stacked like Wyoming did last week, and have some receivers make plays. Pretty much that was it. And hey, Jack Wagner largely took care of what he needed to. Again with the backup subtext, he went 10 to 20, 156 yards, 2 touchdowns, and also ran 3 times for 18 yards. So Wagner made some. Look, the coaching staff actually let him throw it a lot more than I thought they might. This game was a shockingly long football game for an Idaho beating the shit out of the opponent game. But Wagner, Wagner he connected on enough passes. Hey, he's back up. So, were there some accuracy issues? Yes. I mean, like through 2 games, he's around 50%. I think that's just who he is. But again, he's the backup. He connected on 2 touchdowns. He's willing to attempt to stretch the field. When he's off long. So we're not getting picks based off the way that Wagner, his accuracy is sometimes not there. And he checked every box that you need to. The concern, like, hey, the anxiety after Wyoming game was the 2-part concern of God knows what's going to happen if Wagner can't go. And then just Wagner had a rough second half against Wyoming. He showed no, he's stable. He's not going to be the best quarterback in the Big Sky, but he's going to do enough for Idaho. He stretched the field with some long passes. Jordan Dwyer, I swear he had more than I think 63 yards receiving for Jordan, 68 receiving yards for Jordan Dwyer, 2 touchdowns. I could have sworn he had 125. I obviously it's wrong, but just the way that Wagner seems to kind of key in on Dwyer, the impact of Dwyer seemed greater than the box score is going to tell you. But hey, what went well? Backup QB, first start against an FCS team, proved he can do enough and let Idaho's defense and running game take the rest.
Yeah, hitting the comment section. Crew had 76. Wagner tightens up a few throws and 14 more points are on the board. James Aldridge. Hamper looked pretty solid today. Very happy to see him getting some targets this week. Super George 111. Arm looked good, but not on the same page as the receivers at times. Sean Kramer. Wagner does look like with time and development, he'd be a legit QB in this league. All of those points are very valid. Mark Hamper technically led the team with 3 receptions for 74 yards. Had a couple that he would have loved to have back.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
a couple drops in there.
That's
But
what I think Super George 111 is getting at.
yeah, exactly. There was a play pretty early on that happened actually right in front of our seats. Honestly, Hamper, it was a drop because he got both of his hands on it, and yes, you should catch it. But realistically, Wagner needed to get that ball out faster. If Wagner got that ball to him 0.2 seconds faster, Wagner catches that inbounds and shoots up the field for a 50-yard gain instead of he's trying to catch it going out of bounds, and it didn't happen. But again, these are things that your backup quarterback in his second week running the offense as the first team guy, this is the kind of thing that you expect to happen for, again, a redshirt freshman making his second start of his career. Again, what we saw, there's a lot of flashes of really good quarterback play. There's also, hey, he has a tendency to just stare down one receiver. It doesn't necessarily work out the best when you're playing a team like Montana State. Might be a little bit more of an issue, but against Albany, again, when the offensive line is getting the push that they are, keeping the quarterback upright and healthy, it didn't matter in the end. And then you look at just the defense, and Brian, honestly, I am ready to say that Idaho's front seven, specifically the defensive line, probably the best in the FCS. That Albany team brought back, again, 4 of the 5 starters from the Idaho playoff game last year. Technically their entire starting offensive line, because they had one starter get hurt last year. So their entire starting offensive line from week 1 of last year, their number 1 running back, and they averaged 1.8 yards a carry, Brian. And again, Miles Burkett was under pressure constantly. It seemed like KJN was blowing up a tackle every other play, just constantly getting pressure to the quarterback. Outstanding performance from the Idaho defense tonight.
Yeah, so if the question is what went well defensively, you just answered phase 1, front 7. And this could actually be a 1-second talk of what went well for Idaho defensively, pretty much everything. But you look, hey, you talked about front 7. You talked about Idaho getting pressure on the quarterback. Like this is kind of a wrinkle that I think is a step up from what we saw last season. And it's because of the depth Idaho has up front in the second half. This is the 3rd game in a row where second half Idaho is starting to get to the quarterback a lot, which is to say they're wearing down the other team's O-line, and that has been persistent FBS and FCS. So like that's not a mirage because of Albany. That's how this team has played. Like they're just good, up front, like you said. I think again, like we saw, honestly, you probably say it's 3 games in a row, but for a fact, 2 games in a row. Idaho's tackling is just way better this year. Like we're not having issues. And again, this persists, FBS, FCS. We're not having issues with missed tackles, like extending drives. We're having corners. Like Abraham Williams didn't play today. He sat out, and he was a guy we talked about last week as his physicality as a tackler stood out a little bit. Corey Thomas Jr. stepped up at the corner position, did just about the exact same thing. The linebackers, like, hey, Zach Johnson had some plays where he looked great. You understand why X talked about in the offseason, redshirt freshman out of Lake City High School in Coeur d'Alene. Jackson Eck looks like he's just a good Mike linebacker in the Big Sky as a true sophomore. So, yeah, I guess I'm not trying to ruin this, Dallas, but look, a ton went well defensively. And finally, I'm not saying this finally because of Tommy McCormick. Tommy McCormick's been kicking ass for a long time, but Idaho's secondary capitalizes on a turnover, pick 6. Felt like, look, the game was over before that happened anyway, but that was when I was watching this, when Tommy McCormick interception return for a touchdown, when I thought, yeah, dude, this is a statement game for Idaho, the team itself, but defensively, like the defense finally gets to go up against FCS talent, and they're just beating the shit out of the other team like the entire damn game. Yeah, it was a thorough ass kicking.
Brian, would you say it was a 1915 kind of night?
It was a 1915 night, 1915 small batch night for sure. We're talking Snake River Stampede Canadian whiskey. Now, if you go with just the entry level Snake River Stampede, I'm not going to fault you. That's a good choice. But if you save something for celebrating, yeah, this is a 1915 small batch, aged an extra 2 years. Both whiskeys have double barrel finishes. Your Stampede is ex bourbon and ex Oloroso sherry casks. Your 1915 small batch is ex bourbon and then finished in ex Canadian rye whiskey cask. No matter what you pick, man, you're gonna be happy. Get yourself to an Idaho State liquor store, grab some Snake River.
Honestly, Brian, the one thing that I wanted to really hit that we didn't is again Idaho with the takeovers and turnovers. Touchdown Tommy made a return, 32-yard pick six. The game was already well over by that point, but it was just that final exclamation point slamming home. Tommy McCormick gets a pick. Andrew Marshall returns a punt for a touchdown. Had a second one that was assisted by a block in the back. Phenomenal technique on the block in the back, by the way. If you're gonna commit a penalty, you make sure you put that guy's ass in the ground. Honestly, I know we're supposed to transition to what didn't go well, but I feel like there's so much more to talk about of what did go well, because it truly, honestly, I have not felt that complete of a performance from Idaho, honestly, since the beginning of last season. We know that the offense struggled a little bit to end the season last year. This felt just like pure domination in all phases of the game. It felt like Idaho knew midway through the second quarter that there was no chance Albany had to come back at all. I want to give one final shout out to Jordan Dwyer. I loved watching him get pulled out of the game at the end of the third quarter. Matt Linehan is over there telling him, like, scoreboard, we're up 35 points going into the fourth quarter. And Dwyer was visibly frustrated to be taken out of the game. Absolutely love the passion there. Absolutely love that. Again, these guys got up for this. You could tell that they were looking forward to this rematch. Yes, completely different looking team than last year's Albany squad, but the guys were ready for this game. And it did show a little bit in some of those, again, the penalties after the whistle, but for the most part, the team was quite disciplined. There was not a whole lot of like big explosive plays. They kept the ball in front of them. Yeah, okay, towards the end of the game, the third stringers allowed one final garbage time touchdown for Albany. But again, even when the second team guys were in, still putting incredible pressure on the starters for Albany. Like this is a unit that Jason Eck and company are building. This is going to go down as one of the best eras of Vandal football across the almost 100+ years of Vandal football. This is truly breathtaking, Brian. I can't imagine. We only had 11,000 people in the dome. It just, honestly, if you are for some reason not going to Vandal games but listening to this podcast, you need to get to the dome, because this is truly one of the best times to be a Vandal right now.
Yeah, I'm fine piggybacking on a little bit more of what went well, because I mean, hey, a dominating performance like this, like there shit isn't going to be much talking about what did not go well. This Idaho team, and hey, there's going to be some listeners who are going to get they're about to be emotionally devastated by this comparison. So the personality of the coach is part of what becomes the team. And one of the things that Montana, when they're really good, is famous for is like, hey, Bobby Hauck, his whole approach is intensity and to try to create momentum. And that's how sometimes you'll see like a Montana team, when they're good, a Montana team doesn't actually score that well. Like they will just kill some teams when they score like 45 points. And it's a combination of special teams, defense plus offense, and everything work together. This Idaho team, they feel like they have a little bit of that in their DNA, and hey, in like a Jason Eck, Dan Jackson type of way. Not trying to say everything's like Montana or anything, but this is defensively, this is just different. It felt like the first two games, we knew defensively Idaho, they were showing they were good in essentially all levels in both games previously. So like, hey, that part's not a surprise. But but just based off, you want to talk whether it's because of playing Oregon, whether it's because, hey, Wagner's in his first start and, he's got to get his sea legs under him, whatever like extenuating circumstance you want to talk about. The offense just wasn't able to produce at a level that would complement the defense the way that, a number 3 football team in the FCS is going to be. But against the FCS talent, no, offensively they were good enough so that defensive energy of just absolutely taken everything away that Albany can do when that was suddenly paired with that first, 3-play, 80-yard touchdown drive. When you start to pair that with, hey, Jordan Dwyer connecting on, Jordan Dwyer and Wagner connecting on their 2 touchdown passes. When you're seeing the running lanes open for, Nate Thomas, Elijah Cummings. When the offense is able to start, showing what they can do, that could, those 2 things compiled, and suddenly this was a dominating performance. This, to me, in a lot of ways, this completely felt like a statement game, which, I mean, not that the team actually cares about subs the club or something like that, but that the team, hey, I think lots of people watching last couple of games knew Idaho was going to be good, but without Jack Lane, you're dialing back what playoff expectations were. Yeah, no, not dialing them back at all. This defense is going to win a shit ton of games, and offensively, when they're not playing FBS teams, looks like Idaho is going to be just fine, putting up some points on their own. So it was just incredible to see both those facets working in different ways today, and how that just became. It's hard to stress how Idaho just completely. So they took everything away that Albany could do, and then Idaho could pretty much do what they wanted to on both sides of the ball. That's a number 3 team. That's a team that absolutely deserves that ranking where it feels like we're no longer extrapolating based off looking good against tough teams. No, we got to see the material thing. And the attendance at this game, Dallas, it was like 11,400, I believe. It's 11,432 total. There's a couple more. My ticket didn't scan. Idaho historically has been kind of slow in attendance-wise with home openers. If this is the floor, that's great news, because that was the same level of attendance we had in those ISU playoff games. But I got to say, you got to get here. This team feels like it has a way it could be special. And the other 2 teams last 2 years have been really fun with how good this team is defensively. This really feels like a team that could be the good old days are today. So if you can go to the games, you absolutely have to, man. Sorry, I'm gonna keep rambling saying the same fucking thing. The offensively, defensively, they just beat the shit out of Albany, and that's it.
Brian, you called it a statement victory. You know what's a real statement victory? Taking a vacation with Hughes River Expeditions. They've been vandal-owned and operated since 1976. You can take a great all-inclusive week-long vacation just right here in your backyard. They're ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. There's multi-day trips like the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River of No Return, the Salmon River Canyons, the Selway, even the Perced Meteor Shower. There's pristine beaches or pristine bitches if you know the right people. Hit up Colin for that one. Running the amazing whitewater, hiking scenic trails, spotting the wildlife. Again, beautiful natural hot springs, and the same thing I'm always harping on, guys. Fishing some of the most remote stretches of river in the entire United States. Just bring your clothes, and HRE is going to handle the rest. Grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call them now at 406-540-4450 or check them out at hughesriver.com. Brian, that's, I think, the biggest thing I want to harp on. Crewhead 76 says, we should win every game if we stay healthy. Montana State will be the biggest challenge. Montana State is what I see in this team. Jack Wagner could step in and start at Montana State, and I don't think they would lose a beat. Yes, again, the arm accuracy is not quite there yet. Can you expect that out of a redshirt freshman? If a redshirt freshman in the FCS was able to hit every throw perfectly, probably wouldn't be a backup quarterback in the FCS. That's just how that works. But he's got the legs. He's got a cannon. Again, you stick him on that Montana State team and they don't lose a beat. James Aldridge saying MSU won't have a quarterback at that point, knowing Tommy. Hopefully that is going to be the case when Idaho does roll up to Montana State, because that is going to be the biggest challenge left. outside of that, Brian, I really, you look at this schedule and man, Jack Wagner answered the questions for me today. Yeah, 50% completion percentage, 156 yards, 2 touchdowns, not numbers that jump off the page, but it really, Brian, special is the only way I have to describe this team because it truly, honestly feels so much different than last year. Giovanni McCoy was great. Anthony Woods was great. Obviously, Hatton and Jackson are two of the best Vandal receivers of all time. But this team just feels like, that top edge is gone, but the depth is just so much stronger. It doesn't matter who's running the ball between Nate Thomas and Eli Cummings. I'm expecting that guy to break a run, whether it's Eli slipping out of a tackle or Nate Thomas just running right through people. It doesn't matter what it is. There's going to be production here because that offensive line, again, we saw it, 2 starters go down and they're still getting pushed. They're still getting protection. Shout out to, as Taylor Cash says, shout out to Slice for moving the pocket around. It looked really good. They did a really good job keeping Wagner upright. Brian, we could talk for 30 more minutes about how good this team was. The one last shout out I want to give, Super George 111 saying Andrew Marshall, a star in the making. Andrew Marshall has made me completely forget about Ormani Arnold. Good for him for getting 6 figures to go to the FBS, but Andrew Marshall would have absolutely taken his job this year.
Yeah.
Andrew Marshall would be alongside Marcus Harris and be the best cornerback duo in the FCS. Andrew Marshall looks unreal. He's been great at corner. He's been great, obviously, returning punts. It's hard to pinpoint a weakness or what went wrong with this team, Brian, because we're grasping at straws for that. Every phase was good.
No, like the two to me, there's 2 things, and it just takes 10 seconds. So it's 100 yards and penalties, too much. We know the number's not 0. Any team that plays with a little bit of a chippy, like kind of aggressive edge, they're going to pick up some penalties. So like, hey, like we know that. I guess won like 100 yards is a lot of yards. So hey, love to have that be a little bit fewer, and would love some of them to be a little less timely. Like we referenced that first drive. A personal foul to extend what should have been a 3 and out. Like, hey, like, not that we want personal foul anytime, but maybe not a personal foul at the end of a third and long where Idaho stopped Albany. Like, you just need not have those. And hey, like for all the good, you and I feel good about Jack Wagner. The only thing to remember is you got to keep the backup lens when talking about Wagner. Because this Idaho team isn't a team where the point of their executions for the quarterback to win the game. Wagner needs to do enough, but just keep that in mind. That like against some of the better teams like Montana State, Wagner's probably going to have to make a few more plays for Idaho to win. There's going to be a lot of games where it doesn't matter. As long as if Wagner can play like this for most of Idaho's schedule, we're talking about a first round bye.
Yeah, easily. No, without question. As Nick Weber says in the comments, the weakness was our 3rd and 4th string against their 1st string. Like that was really when it felt like, oh yeah, okay, there's a battle here. Outside of that, this game was in hand from, again, the 3rd offensive play of the game for the Vandals. Nick Weber, going into the 4th quarter, we held Albany under 40 yards on the ground. Unfucking real. Completely agree, Nick. Again, we in the preview show we talked about this. They brought back their entire offensive line, and again a running back that's won some conference awards, and he was held to 14 carries for 23 yards.
But it is worth acknowledging from, hey, this is reports we have on the ground. Thank you for Nick Weber here. Nick Weber says I'm still not convinced that Albany didn't save some travel costs by putting ISU players in purple and white today. So that could be maybe a better explanation of why we saw what Nick referenced separately about, hey, 40 yards rushing through the majority of the game.
The one to quickly caveat in here, I do have one negative I want to mention, Brian, before we continue just slobbing the knob of how great Idaho played today. Kind of disappointed in the tight end production today. Just not what I was expecting to see this year, especially as Eck has said, this is the deepest tight end room he's had. There's 11 tight ends on the roster, maybe 10. And we got 1 catch for 2 yards out of Alex Moore. Mike Martinez was in there with a couple blocks, as was Jake Cox. But again, they're just
Mike
kind of
Martinez was missed on a wide open pass. He was just overthrown by like 17 yards.
Which is why in the box score he does have a 0 yards receiving, 0 yards, or excuse me, 0 receptions, 0 yards, 0 touchdowns, because he was targeted there.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see the tight end room do a little bit more. As James Aldridge says, needed more Cox for sure. Super George, more Cox. There's Taylor Cash mentioning again that Martinez touchdown that Wagner unfortunately missed him. But again, this is small nitpicking here. I thought Emerson Cortez Mendivar, he also got overthrown a couple different times. Thought he looked really good in there as the third receiver. He definitely popped. Definitely looks like he's got the speed to succeed at this level. But it was also really cool to see Nate Thomas and Eli Cummings out there at the same time for a couple plays. Like we're grasping at straws here for things that didn't go well. Would have loved to have seen a little bit more production out of the tight end room, but hey, we're nitpicking over a game that Idaho won 41-13.
Yeah, can I hit one more thing that went well just before we talk about players of the game?
Absolutely.
You already touched on it about Jordan Dwyer being pissed that he was pulled out, and like you're talking about that example as it's there's two ends. The fire you see out of a guy like Jordan Dwyer getting pulled is great. That's indicative to me of how that interaction worked, of the DNA of this team, of like intersection of intensity and competence. That's what we want. Last year, you and I, when we sat next to each other games, we were sometimes, one of the frustrations we had was some of the Idaho blowouts. And it's like, hey, what in God's name is Giovanni McCoy doing out there? Like, why is Anthony Woods? We have no other running back. Why is Anthony Woods getting touches this late? Ditto Jermaine Jackson, Hayden Hatton. You and I had that discussion in games, felt like 3 or 4 times last year.
Yeah, too many times.
It was great to see the coaching staff, fourth quarter blowout game. Yeah, we're not risking it, dudes. And hey, backups got to play in the fourth quarter. You want them to get reps. That matters for development. But real happy to see that Eck and Co. are being protective of some of the guys they need to be protective of in blowout wins like this. Maybe losing Jack Wagner early in a non-blowout was kind of paradigm altering in some way. I'm not inside Jason Eck's head. I do know this is materially different than what we saw last year, and I'm stoked that this is where we're at. If we're at the point where Idaho, look, we're going to see Idaho scoring 40 points. No, they could have scored 60, but they correctly pulled the starters. That's what we want to see.
Brian, one last thing in the comment section. Super George 111. Eck did not look happy most of the game for some reason. Again, I think that was because of the penalties. You could make an argument that a couple of them were ticky-tack. There was a moment where Amari Notice ended up on the ground and Miles Burkett literally ripped his helmet off. And Notice stands up and throws his arms up in the air and is trying to get the officials' attention. Like, I literally just had my helmet pulled off by an Albany player. And then the next play, Idaho gets flagged for a personal foul, while Albany got nothing. You could make a couple arguments there that it wasn't the most evenly called game in that respect, but at the same time, like, you can only control what you can control, and what you can control is not doing dumb shit after the whistle.
Yeah.
So again, that's projecting what I think Eck wasn't super happy about was, again, those 100 penalty yards. You can clean some of that stuff up. Like you said, you're playing on the edge here, on again, the knife's edge. You're going to have some of those, but you can always hope for it to be cleaned up and do better moving forward. Brian, we're over a half hour into this. I want to give one last shout out to Taylor Cash. Greg Gattuso caught a flag. He, again, was very thrilled with his team's performance. It was out there screaming like a madman for most of the game, in the officials' ears, and finally got a flag at the end of the game for that. So always nice to see that for a real classy winner like that. But Brian, our players of the game, let's hit the offense first.
I honestly, I want to say the O-line. If that might be a cop out, but I was really impressed with the offensive line today.
You're correct. It might be a cop out, but it's also the correct answer. Like, there's no way around that. 33 carries for 247 yards, 7.5 yards a carry, no sacks, 1 quarterback hit.
Yeah, Wagner getting a lot of time.
Yeah, Wagner had plenty of time, which again is why are some of those things you can clean up. The timing wasn't great with the receivers. Well, you want to see that start improving when his pockets are clean like this.
Yeah,
I think it's going to continue to improve game in and game out because it certainly felt better than it did in the Wyoming game to me.
Well, and Wagner's only been a starting quarterback for 2 years of his life. Like he was a starting quarterback for 1 year in high school. You know the recruiting background story this better than I do, Dallas. And then he's a redshirt freshman. It's like he didn't play last year. So he's been getting regular reps as a quarterback. This is his third year, about the second total year where he's actually getting on the field for games. That's a guy who, like, you understand saying, hey, he hasn't reached his ceiling. You could understand a world where you say, hey, Jack Wagner, halfway through this year, 3/4 through this year, might look a lot different than the guy we're seeing right now, who, again, is doing enough. And all we need is for Wagner to do enough. That defensively, this team defensively is going to win a shit ton of games. The rest, offensively, there's other strengths on this team. Wagner just has to do enough. And hey, 2 weeks in a row he has.
Exactly. So to point that out very quickly, Jackson Jones, he ended up being a Washington recruit. I don't remember if he's still there, but he was the starting quarterback for the first 3 of Wagner's 4 seasons in high school. So Wagner only had 1 season as the starting quarterback because he was backing up a UW commit for 3 years. So that is why he did not have as much reps as a lot of guys get when they're in high school and they move on to FBS or FCS. For the offensive player of the game, again, I would have gone with the offensive line, but I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to go with Jordan Dwyer. Again, 5 receptions, 68 yards, 2 touchdowns. Absolutely felt like those numbers could have been tripled, and I would have believed it in the box score. Honestly, it felt like when Idaho absolutely needed to make a play, Jordan Dwyer was the guy. And yes, part of that is because Wagner was staring him down. He's receiver number 1 for a reason, but how do you become receiver number 1? By being the guy who makes the plays. An incredible little back shoulder throw that Dwyer kind of turned at the last second and was able to bring it in on a long third down. Like the kid's only going to get better. I'm not ready to call him Hayden Hatton 2.0 yet, but Jordan Dwyer is going to look really good in this offense when there's a little bit more stability and consistency at quarterback, whether it's Jack Lane coming back and doing what he's been projected to do for years, or Jack Wagner just getting more experience and getting the timing better. Jordan Dwyer is going to be a problem in the FCS for the next couple again, however long he's going to be here with transfer portal and NIL. You never know. If Jordan Dwyer finishes his career out here as a Vandal, he's probably going to go down as one of the best players in Vandal history. Like he's got that potential. You can see it all over him. A couple more seasons here, he's going to put up some crazy numbers. Defensively, Brian, I'm going to let you take a swing first. I know who my defensive player of the game is. I think we might end up having the same guy, but I'm going to let you go first.
I'm going to go with Dallas Afalava. My other guy is maybe the one you're going to reference. But look, Afalava, and look, hey, this is more to me to be emblematic of just how strong Idaho was up front. I mean, hey, Afalava has a sack and a half, 4 total tackles, but he was part of that that front 7, especially D line, that completely took away the running game for Albany. Albany had nowhere to run the entire game, and like Idaho's getting to the quarterback, but like they're not having to send the house. That's I call that promising. And Afalava, all big preseason, all Big Sky. We know the dude's fantastic. Just he's a sophomore, so no, yeah, I'm going with Afalava. There's a lot of guys. It'd be so easy to point to. Like part of me want to go Tommy McCormick. Because of that pick 6, and just Tommy McCormick's been good for a long time. It's nice to see him specifically in the secondary capitalize on the turnover for a touchdown. It's just by that point the game was over. That was just the final absolute sledgehammer nail into the coffin. But to me, the front 7 is the part that stood out the most.
Yeah, that was the point in the movie where the dog gets taken out back and shot in the head. That's what happened right there. That was the Great Dane being put out of its misery. So definitely honorable mention to Tommy McCormick. in the comment section, Patty Frakes making a comment for Dwayne McDougal making some really nice plays. Andrew Dennis doubling down on that. I did think Dwayne McDougal looked really good, had a couple of different pass breakups. I would have gone Dallas off of lava, or who I was thinking, Keyshawn James Newby, man. He didn't pop off of the page. He only had 1 sack to get up to 6 in the first 3 games, and only 3 tackles.
Which, side note, he had 5.5 sacks all of last year. So he's already passed last season's production.
Yep. Again, as we mentioned in the preview show, Jason X said that he thought KJN was a guy who could get up to 10 sacks this year, and he's at 6 after 2 FBS games and a rematch of a Final Four team last year. Absolutely insane. But again, his impact was so much more than just the 1 sack that he registered, because it seemed like, again, while Afalava was absolutely just mauling the running lanes, anytime that they dropped back to pass, it seemed like KJN was blowing up whoever was assigned to block him. It just made it, again, it makes it easy for defenses when there's pressure on the quarterback that quickly. Honestly, a guy that's going to be playing on Sundays, truly incredible to see his rise from D2 Montana Tech to being, honestly, as Patty Frakes said earlier in the comment section, he's probably the front runner for the Buck Buchanan Award right now. Like, there is a chance that this guy went from D2 to best defensive player in the FCS and is certainly going to see some chances on Sundays. It truly outstanding work. I wanted to give also another shout out. You mentioned him earlier. Zach Johnson, I thought looked really good. Linebacker play a whole lot different than it was last year. Last year, Exree Alexander obviously popped as a freshman. Trey Thomas looked good as a senior, coming in for his final ride. Jackson Eck had some good moments. Dylan Lane had some good moments. Man, now Dylan Lane's now a second, third string guy, which
he's third string. Like, he's not even listed on the depth chart anymore.
Yeah, which is crazy, because when he got out there, he still looked really good. It's crazy how quickly this defense has flipped from, hey, there's some weak points, there's some points where things need to. Oh man, it'd be really cool if Paul Moala was still here. Man, I haven't thought about Paul Moala once. This group of linebackers and defensive linemen is insane. There's so much depth there, and again, the secondary is just looking better and better. You could name, again, it feels like half a dozen guys as the defensive player of the game, because it was an outstanding effort everywhere. Give a shout out again, Super George 111. Sear Barnes played like Jadeveon Clowney. Sear Barnes looked great. He had a tackle for loss that was 5 yards in the backfield on a blitz that he got just right through the line and absolutely blew up their running back. It was, again, Brian, it was true domination at every single level of the field tonight, or today.
Yeah. Do nothing to add other than from our stats department. Patty Frick saying, hey, Montana Tech, NAIA, minor. I want to say that I will never pick the punter as player of the game when the team scores 41 points. But the comment section is pretty stoked about LJ Harm. It started out with Andrew Dennis saying, who's going to be brave enough to take LJ Harm as their player of the game? No one. The team scored 41 points. But James Aldrich, I will, Andrew. LJ was amazing today. Taylor Cash. Harm had the wedge working well today on these punts. So, yeah.
5 punts for Harm, averaged 43.4 yards a punt, long of 51. 4 of them inside the 20, including the one that was downed on essentially what would have been the half-yard line. Outstanding work from special teams. Cameron Pope missed a field goal at the end of the second half from 50 yards.
I'm glad they gave him that shot.
Same. I love that. I have no issues with missing a 50-yard field goal as the clock expires.
It's also his second field goal attempt.
Yeah, exactly.
He needs reps.
And then, unfortunately, replacing an NFL talent at long snapper is not that it's not going well, but the first snap of the game was pretty rough, and just couldn't get the ball down in time.
The extra point snap.
Thank you. The first long snap, the extra point snap. Holder has to kind of roll out and just gets hit, 6 yards behind the goal line. And then the band chose to not play the fight song until after the PAT had been made. So, we're early in the breaking in. I think it was Xander Eccles was the long snapper tonight. We're early into breaking in the replacement for, again, the guy who's now the long snapper for the Detroit Lions. So you expect to have a little bit of a fall off there.
By the way, in 3 games, there's been 1 issue.
Yeah.
And it was completely inconsequential.
Yes.
It's part of a blowout. So, like, hey, whatever. I'm confident in Xander, and I am stoked to know that, hey, everyone has a mistake or 2 in them. If you can vomit the mistakes out in a 41-13 win, that's the best time to have them.
100%, because you don't want it to be 4 or 5 times in a row like Weber State, Montana State a couple years ago.
I love how that was like 3 years ago, but like it's the PTSD of that game is so ingrained in Big Sky fandom, it just is not going to go away.
Well, I mean, again,
should it? No.
Most people don't think of the long snapper because typically the snap gets in and it works, and okay, hey, that guy did his job, cool. Well, when he fails his job 4 or 5 times in a game, it sticks in your memories. As Taylor Cash says, people don't forget, just like Greg pissing his pants in the 2nd grade. Shout out Super Bad. Final thoughts, Brian. We are well beyond this After Dark episode is running much longer than we expected. Your final thoughts on Idaho's, again, just taking the Great Danes for a walk, 41-13 today.
It felt like this game was a statement, an absolute exclamation point on. This is a team that probably thinks they can win an FCS title, and if they're going to play defensively like this, they're going to beat a lot of teams. If they're going to play defensively like this, they're going to play into December, and I'm okay with it. Hey, just talk about the fan base numbers. 11,400 is probably the best. I'm not going to look this up, but it's 11,400 is probably like the best opening day numbers Idaho's had in quite a while. Mm-hmm. If this is the floor of what Idaho has this season, which it was, that's how it went the last 2 years. Is opening day was the floor attendance wise. The games are going to be we know the team's going to be good, but the environment's going to be fantastic. Mm-hmm. I really believe this is going to be a special year. So if you have not yet figured out how to get yourself to the Dome, and you can, you should. This is just the era we live in, guys. It's the level of FCS football and the fact of like the tectonic plates shifting with conferences. We just don't know how long any of this is going to be here, but we know it's here right now. So, don't miss out on this, man.
Yeah. As Nick Weber constantly posts in our Discord, again, if you're interested in what we're doing, if you want to be part of the community, patreon.com/Tubs at the Club. You can sign up for less than a cup of coffee a month, get into our Discord and hang out with a bunch of people. Our game thread was exploding today, even with a lot of people inside the Dome on road games. It is the number one place to be for Vandal football. But as Nick Weber has been posting in our Discord frequently, the GIF, I believe it's Letterkenny, it might be Shorzy, I forget which one. This team will never lose again. Man, you look at this schedule: Abilene Christian, UC Davis, NAU should be favored quite heavily in all 3 of those games. Maybe not as heavily in Davis, but then you get to Montana State's going to be the big one. But after that, Cal Poly, Eastern Washington is terrible. Portland State, Portland State is Portland State. Weber State is not looking great. Lamar might be better than we thought. And then Idaho State, like, we're really, Brian, this is a team that could go 8-1 or 9-0 the rest of the season and legitimately be a top 2 seed in the playoffs and play in the Kibbe Dome all the way to the championship game. Like that is legitimately on the table for year 3 of Jason Eck. That is how good this team played and how good this team looked tonight.
Yeah, let me just co-sign that. Yeah, I wanted to derail the show by shifting back to making a joke about the top 5 team that you wrote off.
Well, I think they're coughing up enough over there that I think the jokes write themselves, Brian.
Yeah.
Portland State, more like Coward State, ended up having to cancel their game against South Dakota today, if anybody didn't know, because whooping cough got through the team, which sounds to me like a great excuse to wipe some losses off of your record when you know you're going to lose every single game this year.
We should extend the show longer to talk more about Portland State and Northern Colorado, but we can do that tomorrow night when Patty very likely joins me for the Big Sky Conference Power Rankings. We're here to talk Idaho. So yeah, patreon.com/Tubs the Club. And everyone we saw there at the game, it was great seeing you. Love when people pull us aside to say hi. We listen to the show, and we can talk for a little bit. I got to drop off my first 5 bottles there's 9 total of the Tubs of the Club blend. Canadian whiskey blend that I put together this summer. Dropped off my first 5 bottles. There's next home game I should be able to drop off the last 4. But yeah, dude, we're after 11 o'clock and like it feels like we could just keep the show rolling. That's probably the cue to just fucking stop talking. But yeah, kick-ass time. Can't wait to see everyone. It's wild that now we don't actually have any home games until October, but Idaho picks up a couple more wins. Man, homecoming against NAU. I've got the date circled on my calendar, dudes.
Yeah, October 5th is going to be a bad time to be an Astrojack or a Lumberjack or whatever the hell they want to call themselves that day, because that dome is going to be rocking. It's going to be loud, and this is going to be one of the best teams we've ever seen, Brian. This is again, they honored the Vandal Hall of Fame, which included the famous John Freeze team that unfortunately he got hurt, and so many other starters did, and they didn't win the national championship as the number 1 seed. But man, this is going to be one of those type of squads. This is just it. If you're looking for a reason to get excited about Vandal athletics, this football team is it. We've been saying it for a couple years now, but man, this is it. The third year of Jason Eck is where this program is finally turning that corner of being not just a playoff team, but a national title contender.
Yeah, it's weird. And like the manifestation isn't what you would have thought 3 years ago, or not even 3 years ago. Last year, the manifestation we're seeing is not what you would have thought. But defensively, Idaho's taken a step, which is pretty impressive to think considering last year. It's just every issue from last year seems to have been solved by one of two things. One, we retained a lot of young guys who played, and maybe like, hey, part of that was just growth of playing young guys. But second, Eck's been pretty targeted with what he uses the transfer portal for, and his defensive transfers they've all hit. Like, are they are they home runs? Defense player of the year? No, but that's not what this team needs. It needs guys who will do their job, play physical. And that's what the secondary is what was buttressed with transfers. That's what they've done so far.
Yeah, Corey Thomas Jr. looked great. Again, Abe Williams was out today, so backup kick returner, moving the cornerback depth chart up a spot, and Corey Thomas looked very good. So again, guys, we're obviously well past time, and we're both rambling because it's well past 11 o'clock on the West Coast, Best Coast, but. This is the team. If you're looking for a reason to buy into Vandal football, do it now before the good days are gone. It's so hard to know when it's the good days when you're actually in them. Man, you got to listen to Brian and I. You're in the good days right now. It's time to get out and support this team. With that, Brian, go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals. Go Vandals. Go Vandals.